Hi there, I'm doing this as a recording rather than live so you can see the presenter's view of what it's like when you're giving a Zoom session. When I move my cursor around at all, I get this toolbar at the bottom, and I'm going to use this clip to discuss what we do on the toolbar. The first thing I do when I'm setting up a Zoom session is to go to the Manage Participants option, the Participants pod, I'll be calling it today, and I double click it. And that puts this little pod up into the corner. I can move this around to wherever I like. And I can do the same thing with a chat pod, just so I can have both these up and I can see them very clearly. I tend to use the right-hand side, the upper and the lower parts, because that tends to be where not much information is in a PowerPoint presentation. Obviously, if you have a co-host who's helping you handle participants and chat, you don't need to have these to refer to, but I like to have these up in the upper and lower right-hand corners. The second thing I want to point out is that when you do a screen share, your toolbar is going to change. So don't freak out the first time you do this from a live Zoom presentation. I'll do a screen share here. I'll share my other monitor. And notice now that my toolbar here is different. It's smaller and it auto hides fairly quickly. So if you're in the middle of a session and you haven't been paying much attention, you might freak out going, where's my toolbar? Just go to the green bar and it'll all come back. All the same tools are there. They're just not spread out as much as they were before. To stop my share, I use this red stop button. And now we have the old-fashioned toolbar there back for us to use. Over here on the left, I have the ability to mute and to stop my video quickly. I can also change microphones here. I can test my speakers and microphones and adjust my audio settings, something you probably wouldn't want to do during a session. And during video, I can choose which camera I'm using, and I can work with my video settings as well. Up next is the all-important security button, which allows you to manage your security on the fly. Particularly important if you feel that a Zoom meeting is starting to go south on you. You can click this button and you immediately have a few options. You can lock your meeting on the fly here or enable your waiting room on the fly here. That way no more people will enter the room without you being aware of it. You can disallow or allow screen share here. I generally always keep that off because you can turn that on at any point if somebody wants to share their screen. I keep chat enabled here, but you can disable that if people are being unruly in the chat pod. And you can also remove the ability for people to rename themselves. I keep this on, but if people are renaming themselves in a way you don't find appropriate, you can turn this off as well. Finally, if somebody's being a not particularly useful member of your group, you can remove them on the fly by clicking Remove Participant. This will take away your host names and show you the list of people who are attending. And say Jeff is being unruly, you can remove him using this Remove button. So that's the security button, and realize you always have this available if things start going south during your Zoom session. Up next is the Manage Participants option, or the Participants pod as I call it. Now I've already taken this and put it up here in the right-hand corner. I'll show you that again. I'll first get rid of this with the X. And then I'm going to my toolbar and I'm double-clicking Manage Participants, which gives me this box. And there are several areas here where I can control my participants. First of all, I can invite people from here. I generally use this pod to invite my monitor computer during a Zoom session so I can see what's going on there. I can mute everybody using this button, and I can unmute everybody using this button. As a rule, I keep everyone muted unless specific circumstances require it otherwise. These three dots here allow me some more options. Muting them on entry, always good. I don't allow them to unmute themselves, but again, you can allow them to do that if your meeting requires that. You can allow them to rename themselves. I figure that's fairly benign, so I let them do that. I like to have the chime on so I can find out when people are entering or exiting. And these are two options we saw before in the security button. You can enable your waiting room here or lock a meeting here if you don't want anybody else to enter. So those are the bottom options. I also have options when I look at a specific individual. Let's look at that Jeff who was being unruly a few minutes ago. I can unmute him here, but if I click more, I can make him a host or make him a co-host if I want to give him rights and allow him to share, allow him to manipulate the meeting in any way. I can allow recording on that end. I don't think you'd really need to do this. We'll talk about recording in just a little bit. I can rename them using this option, I can put them in the waiting room or remove them if I don't want them currently in the session. So that's the participants pod. You're going to be working with this a lot if you're working with many Zoom meetings. I'm not going to be covering polls during this clip, but I will have some materials up shortly on how to build a poll using Zoom. And I want to point out here that they are very useful to have at the beginning and the end of a session. At the beginning, to get people interacting with the session and interacting with their screen so they aren't really watching as a passive observer, but feel they're involved in the actual process. And then an ending poll is fairly obviously useful for evaluations. You get a sense of how well that Zoom meeting went. Chat pod is next. We discussed this briefly before. I'll quickly get rid of this chat pod and then double click my chat so you can see how I do that. There are a few options available here. If you have file sharing turned on, this is where they share files using this file option, and this allows them to pick their file. You can also, using these three dots, restrict what kind of activities they have on the chat bot. So for instance, you can have them talk to no one, have them talk just to you, having everything be public, or allowing them to be fully able to chat with public and private. So not a lot of options on the chat pod, but you can restrict who they're talking to and whether all those conversations are public or private or not. Screen share is next. I can use this option to share either a specific application that I have open on my computer, or simply share one of my screens. If you're moving between applications, probably best that you work with a screen rather than choosing an application. And this option just to the right of share screen allows you to, again, on the fly, allow only one participant sharing at a time. I can't imagine multiple participants sharing simultaneously would be a good experience, but that is an option if you want. And then advanced sharing options, you can only have the host share, only one participant can share at a time. Recording, you click this button to record. I like to always say when I'm setting up a meeting on the web interface that we looked at earlier, I like to automatically record on my local machine as I'm creating a Zoom, but I always click the record button here as well, just to make sure. Let's go to Breakout Rooms next. With Breakout Rooms, I can divide the participants at my Zoom meeting into individual audio rooms for them to discuss matters among themselves. I can add people manually or have this done automatically. I click Breakout Rooms. Notice I have 2 participants up here, so I'm going to take it into 2 rooms, and that the Zoom automatically does the math to tell me that's 1 participant, 2 room. If I click automatically and click Create Rooms, I have Jeff in Breakout Room 1, Kay in Breakout Room 2, and when I click Open All Rooms, that allows them to then join their rooms and begin. When I'm done with the breakout session, I can close all my rooms using this button. If I want to assign people manually to breakout rooms, I can do that as well fairly easily. I click Breakout Rooms. I choose manually this time. We're still working with 2 rooms, 1 participant per room. I create my rooms, and then on Breakout Room 1, I click Assign. This gives me a list of people, and I then assign them to their appropriate rooms. Open the rooms to begin. They'll do the joining themselves, and when they're done with their breakout sessions, I close all their rooms. And then finally, the reactions here is useful to either give somebody applause, or if you want to just get a quick view of the opinions of the people in the room, you can have them give you a thumbs up if they approve of something, and then you can quickly get a sense of what the room thinks of whatever question you've thrown out at them. And that, in a nutshell, is how to work with the toolbar in a Zoom session.